Greetings, Rabbi Griscott here with your weekly sermon for the double parsha of Acharei Kedoshim. Rabbis have been having all sorts of fascinating discussions about the Jewish law implications of the coronavirus. All sorts of new realities we're living in. How do you conduct a prayer service over Zoom? What prayers can you say and which ones can't you say when you're not actually gathered together? How do you do simchas, happy occasions like a wedding, a bris, a baby naming over Zoom? There's going to be a lot of fascinating Jewish law precedent set during this time. And one of the discussions being had is the fact that we're missing the Torah reading every week. There are actually some who are proposing that on whatever Shabbos we get back to shul, we're going to have to make up all those Torah readings. Dear God. So you've heard of the idea of a double parsha. Well, if we've missed 20 weekly parshas, then whatever Shabbos we get back to shul, the poor Torah reader and the poor congregation are going to have to sit there and listen to the Torah reader make up all 20 of those missed portions. That would make for quite a long davening. So, luckily, most rabbis have said this would not actually be necessary. The idea is that we celebrate on Simchas Torah that we completed the Torah cycle, and so you're supposed to complete the entire cycle and make up the missed readings if you missed them. But most authorities are saying it was an emergency, it was nothing we could do, so you don't have to make them up. But in any case, as a friend of mine posted on Facebook, if you are one of those synagogues that is so pious that you're planning to make up all the missed Torah readings, I salute you. Now, please tell me which Shabbos you're planning on doing that so I know to daven somewhere else. And that is indeed my thinking as well. I think if the first Shabbos back, we want to encourage people to come back to shul and not deter them. Now, all that being said, there is one day of the year, of course, on which we all do tolerate staying in shul all day, even if not everyone stays all day, but we tolerate the fact that shul itself is going all day. And that is, of course, Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. We say, all right, that makes sense that there's shul going on all day on one day of the year. Now, in the first of our two parshas, in the double parsha tomorrow, Acharei, the beginning of the parsha is all about the Yom Kippur service. So God spoke to Moses after the death of Aaron's two sons when they approached before Hashem and they had died. So God tells Aaron his two sons had approached the Holy of Holies uninvited by God, and God struck them dead. And he tells Aaron, here are the rules for when you go into the Holy of Holies, only on the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, and here's how you do Yom Kippur. Now, perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the avodah, of the service on Yom Kippur that the high priest would do, to me at least, is the ritual of the two goats, okay, and the lottery that came with it. So there were these two goats, and one of them would be offered on the altar as a sacrifice to God, and the other would symbolically bear the sins of all of Israel and be sent into the desert and then pushed off a cliff to die. Pretty intense. And the two goats had to look exactly the same. And it says, "V'natan Aharon al shnei asirim goralot, gorol echad la'Adonai v'gorol echad la'Azazel." Aaron shall place lots upon the two he-goats, one lot for Hashem and one lot for Azazel. So it was chosen by lottery which one of the two goats would be offered as a sacrifice and which one would be led into the desert to die. And the English term scapegoat actually comes from this ritual. The scapegoat is the one that's led into the desert. It bears the sins of all the people on it, right? It's a poor scapegoat, literally. It didn't sin itself, but it bears the sins of all the people, and then it's killed. So Azazel probably means something like hell. One of the goats is sacrificed, goes into heaven, it's sacrificed unto God, and the other is led into the desert, into hell. It's still, so to speak, metaphorically. It's still an Israeli insult nowadays. You say, Lech Lazazel, go to hell, comes from this word. So I've joked before that, these two goats get these apparently radically different fates. One goes to God and one goes to hell. But sort of ironically, they're both being killed, right? There's like the metaphor is supposed to be that one gets a good fate and one gets a bad one. Well, the good one is to be sacrificed unto God, and that one is killed too. But okay, at least in the abstract, the message being sent here is a sort of sense of there but for the grace of God go I. In English, we say, right? We ourselves are like these goats. It's chosen by chance, seemingly random chance, by lottery, by goral. Which goat gets the good fate, gets to go to heaven, and which goat, so to speak, gets to go to hell? Random, goral. So the Kohen would have a little box with two lots written on them. One says La Hashem, one says La Azazel. He would pick one out with his hand, hold it over one goat, and if that said unto God, then that one went unto God, and that's how that lottery worked. Now, there's a Hasidic idea that comparing Yom Kippur to the holiday of Purim, and there's a linguistic connection there. The Hasidic idea beautifully plays on the words. Yom Kippur is actually called Yom Kippurim in plural. The Day of Atonement, we call it that, but it's really the Day of Atonements, Yom Kippurim, and it's referring to the rituals of atonement, the many sacrifices that are done on that day. So it's Yom Kippurim. But if you just revowelize it, you could read it as Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippur is simply a day like Purim. How is Yom Kippur like Purim? Purim, it's been said, is sort of the funhouse mirror reflection of Yom Kippur. They are two sides of the same coin. Purim is the most joyous, informal day of the year. You come to shul wearing a costume. On what other day can the rabbi get away with coming to shul dressed up like Batman? That's the atmosphere, a carnival, silly atmosphere on Purim of feasting and rejoicing. Yom Kippur is the most serious and the most somber day of the year. On Yom Kippur, you don't eat at all. On Purim, there's extra eating and extra drinking, even drinking of alcohol and partying. And so Purim stresses joy, and Yom Kippur stresses seriousness. Therefore, Yom Kippurim is Yom Kippurim, a day which is just the mirror image of Purim. And what does Purim itself mean? The Megillah itself tells us that Pur, in the singular, was originally a Persian word meaning a lot or a goral, and it's named after the fact that Haman cast lots to decide on which day he would massacre the Jewish people. The cruelty of randomness, right, being represented by that. I always picture that Haman had a sort of Powerball thing, and he had different dates written on different balls. And he picked one out and he said, "Oh, the 13th of Adar, that's the day that I'm going to massacre the Jewish people." So he peeled Pur, Hu HaGorah Lifnei Haman. And the Pur, that is the lot, so it translates, the Megillah says the Pur, which is Persian for the Goral, which means a lottery was cast before Haman, and he picked out the 13th of Adar. And what does it say in our Parsha about Yom Kippur, these two goats, the Goral, the lottery, the seemingly randomness, again, the sense of there but for the grace of God go I. And in the Purim story, famously, God is not mentioned at all. It's seemingly random events, but God is, of course, behind the scenes. And in the end of the day, God works it all out for the Jewish people. So I think this is a powerful lesson for us in the time we're living in. I think we don't really know how to handle this corona and how the governments have announced a sort of phased reopening. Everyone's trying their best, but the sense of uncertainty and the sense of randomness that comes with this virus and this pandemic and not knowing where it ends and what the end game is, that's very much part of the human experience. And that's sanctified by these two holidays that are mirror images of each other. Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippur and Purim. These are just the two extreme emotions, how we deal with the randomness of life. Extreme somberness, introspection, reflection, that's Yom Kippur. But Purim represents the opposite. Sometimes we look at the randomness and we just laugh in its face. And we have a party and we carnival and we eat, and a carnival, we eat, drink, and be merry because of the randomness. And the beauty of Judaism, the brilliance of Judaism is they're both sacred. Yom Kippur and Purim are just two sides of the same coin, and according to this Hasidic idea, are in fact the two holiest days of the year because they sanctify these two extreme emotions of how to react to the seeming randomness of life, but it's not random because we affirm as a matter of faith that God is behind the scenes. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, we're learning ethics of the fathers now. I put out a daily Mishnah, and it says, "Hakol bidei shamayim, chutz miyirat shamayim." Everything is in the hands of heaven, except for the fear of heaven. That means is you don't control the world. That's in the hands of heaven. How are we going to get out of this pandemic? It's not really under our control. Chutz miyirat shamayim. The only thing you can control in life is your own fear of heaven, which is our way of saying your character. The fear of heaven, a God-fearing person is a way of saying a good person. So everything is in the hands of heaven except your fear of heaven, except one thing you can control in all of this randomness is your character, what you learn from it, how you grow from it. And that's sort of humbling, but it's also liberating. So let's internalize that lesson. There, but for the grace of God, go I. Hakol b'dei shamayim, chutz miyirat shamayim, and sanctifying these two emotions that we're probably feeling now, the emotion of extreme seriousness and fear with the emotion of extreme joy and joking in the face of the randomness. And it's very Jewish indeed to just be mindful about those emotions and to elevate them and sanctify them. With that, I wish everyone a restful Shabbos, a peaceful Shabbos, and Shabbat Shalom.